morning, everyone, and welcome to another presentation of Unchained. I'm here with my friend Mike. Thank you so much for joining us. And before we get into his story today, let me remind you, if this is your first time joining us, to please register. You see on the screen there's a link, relevantseminars.com/Fort Myers. And we really want to encourage you to register so that you can continue to receive updates and reminders, because we are doing this for 10 nights. And if you missed a night, don't worry. We're going to have a recording of it here on the YouTube channel. But we really encourage you to be here live, and we really encourage you to share while you're here. You can share a link on your social media of choice, and others can join in. And we just want to thank you for choosing to be with us tonight. You can click the like button or the subscribe button if you want to be connected to our channel for future presentations. But tonight we are going to be having another interview, and then Pastor Richie Halverson is going to be presenting after our interview. So but let's get right into our interview with Mike. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Excellent.
Yes, it is good to see you. It's good to chat with you. And
It's a pleasure.
yeah, thank you so much for being willing to be interviewed today and tell your story. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us where you're from, and how did you grow up, and how, yeah, just give us a little insight into your early years of your life.
Sure, sure. So I am from Chicago. I moved down here about three and a half years ago. Grew up pretty much a normal childhood. I have two younger brothers. I played a lot of sports. I played football, baseball, main sports. Graduated high school, tried college for a year. I went to Arizona State, kind of fell off the wagon and didn't finish, but came back to Chicago, got a job in a warehouse. My best friend's grandfather owned a business, worked part-time in a warehouse, started driving a truck. Probably till I was about 22, 23, my dad got me a job, knew a guy in a Teamsters union. So I became a member of the Teamsters union at a very young age. And I also had a part-time business with my dad. My dad was a bricklayer, taught me how to do the business. Pretty much did that. Met my ex-wife when I was 25. We started dating. She became pregnant. We got married, and I had another child with her. My ex-wife also had two children from a previous marriage, so I pretty much raised four kids. Yeah, I worked pretty much two jobs until 42. And so actually, though, my parents, just a little side note, my parents did start going to received a Revelation seminar mailer when I was 12. They started going to those Revelation seminars, and then probably when I was about 14, they got baptized. So I knew all about the Seventh-day Adventist Church, even as a early child. And, going on to high school, I had sports on Saturday. I never really went 100% into the church just because of my activities on Sabbath. But anyways, when I was 26, 27, me and my ex-wife did start doing, to get baptized. We started doing like Bible studies with the pastor up in Chicago. So when I turned 28, me and my ex-wife both got baptized together. And so for about maybe 5-6 years, me and my ex-wife did attend church regularly. And my ex-wife started not going. And then as my children were getting older, they stopped going too. And then I actually became a part-time fireman for a few years. So I actually had to train for a while on Sabbath, on Saturdays. And I actually stopped going for 6 months. And then after I finished my fire training, I started going back to church, and me and the family actually for about a year went back to church, and then we kind of all fell away. And, I pretty much had a very normal life. I had a house in the Chicago area, working my two jobs. And then I don't want to say that I kind of completely shut God out, but I pretty much walked away from the church. I never said in my mind that I wasn't going to go back, or that I, was kind of like done with God. I never said that in my mind. But I wasn't doing anything to help out in that situation either. And then, on a December night in 2008, I was watching a movie with my ex-wife, and I started having really, really bad chest pain. I was 42 years old. And my ex-wife thought, well, maybe I was having a panic attack. I don't know. I was always in very good shape. Worked 2 jobs. I was even working for the fire department. Did stress tests every year. There was never a problem. So after about a half hour, my ex-wife did take me to the hospital. They kept me overnight. Couldn't find anything wrong with me. So I don't want to go into a million details, but this went on for about 5.5 months into 2009. So from December of 2008 to like May of 2009, I had chest pain. I would have heart rate increases for no reason, and like going from like normal to like maybe 170, 180. I couldn't control it. Didn't know what was going on. The cardiologist kept on assuring me that I was okay, and then I went to another hospital one time coming home from work from Chicago, and they did a CAT scan, and I realized that I had a tumor in my chest. I had a 6 centimeter tumor in my chest, and found out it was Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Wow.
So went through a pretty tough time for that last 5.5 months there. Didn't know what was going on. Started losing weight. Wasn't feeling well. The doctors, the cardiologists kept on telling me that, I was having panic attacks. I need to go see a therapist. But anyways, so that's pretty much what happened. So I kind of ran into a brick wall there, at 42 at a very young age. So anyways, I saw an oncologist. He pretty much assured me if I did my chemo, 85% chance I'd be okay. So I started chemo in June or July of 2009. So from July of 2009 till December of 2009, I finished my chemo. I did it. I did a PET scan early on in January, and I was cancer-free. I was very happy about that. And then my ex-wife pretty much had came up to me at that point and said that she wanted a divorce. And we had been married for almost 18 years at that point. And I was like kind of floored by that. Wasn't expecting that. But, I said, okay. And what I needed to do was I needed to go back to work in March of 2010. Otherwise, my disability benefits were going to run out. So I really, I lost about 60 pounds. And I kind of had to rehab myself to go back to work, which I did. And, of course, I was upset. But I figured I need to get back to work and get focused. And then at some point in like the middle summer of 2010, my ex-wife did file for divorce. And we were still living together, and I was served papers at my own house, divorce papers, and then we stayed together. I stayed there until January of 2011, and then we set a date for my divorce, which was February 2011. So that's finally actually when I did move out, and so I left my family. I left the house, left the marriage, left my sons there, and actually I lived with my parents for a few months, and then I got an apartment.
So let's stop right there because
Okay.
that's a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
So what I hear you saying is, you were living the typical American dream life up until that moment when you got the news in 42 years old that
Yeah.
you had cancer.
Yeah.
You knew before that something was wrong, but you finally got that confirmed. And it sounds like you kind of had an interest in spirituality, but the things of this world were kind of pushing that out. It wasn't a priority. And you were pretty much content with your life up to that point. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's very fair. Very fair. I even thought in my mind that I'm comfortable. I love my wife, my ex-wife, and I was like, I wasn't seeking God, but I was okay with my life too.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very, very true.
And so then you have these two traumatic, life-changing things happen to you within a matter of a couple of years, cancer and divorce. And either one of those things is is a trigger for behavior that we would call addiction type behavior. So as you were dealing with this loss, first of all, the trauma of going through chemo and losing all that weight and having to go through that process, and then right when you're almost done with that, then you have to deal with your whole life falling apart with your wife choosing to file for divorce.
Right.
So what did you turn to deal with that, to cope with all of that trauma?
Well, in the beginning, when my ex-wife did tell me she wanted a divorce, right, even before I went back to work, to get better, I used to, I wanted to go out and be in the sun, even though it was in the wintertime up in Chicago. And I used to go to the forest preserve and set a blanket out and look up in the sky and just ask God to help me. And really, I was, of course, I was very emotional. I was crying a lot, not in front of my ex-wife and not in front of my kids, but privately. And I was going through, it was a pretty bad time, I'll be honest with you. But I still at that point hadn't sought any alcohol or drugs. I really, pretty much all my life, I maybe was a couple beer guy on a weekend, and that's it. I never had a problem with drugs or alcohol ever in my life. But anyways, after I started going back to work, I went back to work in March of 2010. But when finally a year later, or almost a year later, in February of 2011, when my divorce was final, I got a notice from my union that my company I work for could not afford our paying our wages anymore because I was in a Teamsters union. So then that same year, I was also going to lose my job. I had been there for 22 years. So now I'm talking about in October of 2011, I wasn't going to have a job anymore. So I had to deal with that too. And I got to be honest with you, Pastor, I was going to work every day really, really down. And so going towards like September of 2011, I'm getting really close to being laid off. One of my friends gave me a substance. It's called Vicodin. He saw how depressed I was, and I actually took this pill. And within 5 minutes, I felt great. And I never abused any substance ever in my life. And the first thing I thought was, I got to have more of these. Because of the last year and a half of exactly what you said, I needed relief. I'd have people tell me I need to go see a therapist and get on medication. I never did any of that. So I was kind of white knuckling this whole way. And, one thing I want to bring up, even though when I had cancer and I didn't know what was going on, my dad was still going to church. He told me to read Psalm 91 every day. And that's the only thing I did every day. I read Psalm 91 every day. Even before I knew I had cancer, and then the entire time when I was going through my chemo, I did read Psalm 91 every day. And I used to put the Bible on my chest and ask God to take this cancer away from me. I used to lay it on my chest. So that I just wanted to bring that up.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, because it sounds like you said, this wasn't, some like big rebellious kind of action of, some people get involved in substance abuse out of a rebellious spirit.
Yeah.
But even up to that point, you didn't realize, you're dealing with, a health issue, a marital issue, and then potentially, losing your job all within a couple of years.
Right. Yeah, it was about a year and a half period altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah. But my friend had a back injury and gave me this Vicodin, hydrocodone Vicodin. It's a narcotic pill. And I got to be honest with you, I said, I got to have more of these. And I asked him for more. And it just became, and then once I got laid off in October, I decided to take some time off, which I shouldn't have done because I got severance pay. I walked away with like $30,000. I got $1,000 for every year of severance pay that I worked there and all my vacation time. And I literally I went to my doctor and lied to her and told her I was having chest pain, and she prescribed me hydrocodone. So for 6 months, I did nothing but take, this narcotic every day. And that was the first time I abused a substance. And I got to be honest with you, at the time, I didn't even feel bad about it. I needed that relief. I was living, but I was gone. I wasn't like in the present every day. I was gone. I was so high every day from the hydrocodone. And then after about 6 months, my doctor, this was like from October 2011 probably to like spring of 2012, whatever, April, May, my doctor finally cut me off on it. She goes, "You're done." She goes, "I'm not giving you this anymore." So I had to wean myself off it. And then, which I did, and then I went back to work. I started working. I started driving truck for a small company. It was like a mom and pop company, and not making nearly as much money as I was in the union, but still I was working. And I was doing okay. Everything was fine. I might maybe have a few beers on the weekend. I was coming out of my depression, and I thought life was getting back together again, though I hadn't gone back to church yet, though. That was the one thing that was still missing. So I was kind of living my life on my own, as best I could, working out and just doing my own thing. And then I want to say somewhere around 2015, 2016, my cousin set me up with her neighbor, and then I got involved in a relationship. And so within a short time, I had moved in with her, And so, of course, I'm breaking a lot of commandments. And so, anyways, I'm speeding up just a little bit because, I'm trying to get to the point where I started drinking. And I was with her for about a year and a half, and that relationship ended abruptly. And that's when I turned to alcohol for the first time in my life. But leading up to that, I really never drank every day. But now this woman that I was dating and actually living with, Lori, was like a 1 to 2 glass wine drinker every night, and that's how I started. And I was okay doing that. But then when the relationship ended, then I completely turned to alcohol, and I wanted to numb myself, and I did.
Mm.
I mean, I went hardcore.
So yeah, talk about that kind of descent into the abyss of alcoholism for those years.
Well, I think this was probably like in the fall of 2016. I think that's about when it happened, or it might have been 17, but I think it was 16. I totally turned to alcohol. I'd come home from work every day and couldn't wait to drink. I'd buy a 12 pack on the way home, and I would make sure that I would pass out to go to bed every night. And I would go to work every day, and I'd be hungover. And yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. I totally relied on alcohol every day to get me through the day, or at least through the night. During my work shift, because I was busy and I had something to do, I was okay. But I didn't want to feel that pain again because I had lost my ex-wife before, and now I had another woman abruptly breaking up with me, and yeah, I was hurting, and I wanted to feel numb,
Mm-hmm.
and I did. I made sure I did every night, and that probably went on for about 3 months. And then I ended up getting fired from my job because I kept on calling in sick. I have a CDL license, and if I get a DUI, I'll pull my license. I'll never drive a truck again. So when I would wake up in the morning and hungover or still drunk from the night before, I would call in sick. And I did it so many times that my boss actually fired me.
So that was kind of when you first started dealing with the consequences of the drinking.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And then I even came down to Florida for a while. The first time, even before I really moved down here 3 years ago, I thought, well, maybe I just need to get away for a while. And then I came down here and I was just drinking down. I was down here for about a month. And I was just doing nothing but drinking, to the point where my dad was so worried about me that he was having my phone pinged from the local police departments down here and doing like a well-being check on me. And my dad was very concerned about me. And then, I remember that my dad really, because I didn't know if I wanted to come back to Chicago. When I was down here, I didn't know what I was going to do, and I was running out of money. And I know that my dad was just praying for me like crazy. My dad is kind of like the patriarch of the family. He's always kept going to church the last 30 years. He was the only one in the family at some points. But my dad was praying very, very hard for me. And if you want to call this some kind of godly intervention, one day I woke up, I was still kind of drunk in the hotel room, and something drove me to get in the shower, sober up, go to a hospital, because, when you can't just stop drinking, you could actually go into a seizure. And I for some reason, I packed my stuff up, and something was driving me to do this. I didn't do this on my own. I went to I think it was the Gulf Coast Hospital. I don't remember down here. It was one of the hospitals in Fort Myers. I went there. They admitted me for 2 days, got me sober, gave me medication to drive home, and I drove home sober. Taking this medication, and I don't know to this day, something drove me to do that because I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't think I could even get myself back to Chicago in the state I was in. And my dad said, well, I was praying very, very hard every day, so there was some kind of intervention there. I woke up one day and I was driven to start, making plans to go back to Chicago, and I did. But once I got back to Chicago, I started drinking again. And I actually, because I had nowhere to live, I had, given up my apartment. I was actually moved in with my mom and dad, and I started drinking again. And it just became really, really, really bad. And I'm trying to think now. I have to go back.
Well, it was interesting. You were telling me before I started recording that you said it wasn't like you were drinking because you liked alcohol. You liked how it tasted, or you didn't enjoy it. Like you were consciously using it for the effect, but you didn't even really like drinking. Is that correct?
No, I couldn't stand it, to be honest with you. I like being healthy. I like working out and eating healthy, and especially since my cancer. And I'm the last one who should be drinking. And when I say drinking, I'm talking about like like pounding drinking, like like to get really drunk really fast.
Hmm.
And yeah, I don't like that feeling. I don't like it. I don't even like being drunk.
And
Uh,
that's so odd for somebody who, maybe they have this perception of alcoholism or addiction in general that, it's like, oh, addicts, that's just what they want. They're
yeah,
just doing that because and the reality is that a lot of times it's not about that. It's about trying to, the pain of the emotional pain and trauma is so great that you're willing to put yourself through something you don't even like just so you don't have to feel that.
yeah, very true, Pastor. And I got to say honestly, I hope nobody's ever in that situation where you can't stand you can't stand reality, and it's a bad place to be in. But I was there.
So what happened next as you were now back with your parents? You're back in Chicago. This was probably what, 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah, this is probably like around 2018. So I got myself back together. I slowly stopped drinking kind of on my own, and I got a job, and then I got into another relationship again, and then uh, well, there's a lot. I don't know how much I can tell you about all this stuff, but there are some things that I just want to mention real briefly. I don't have to get in too much, but those times when I was drunk, my parents for used to come down to Florida every year for like January and February of like every winter because my dad was retired. And for one of those periods, I was living by my parents' house, and it got so bad that my parents didn't want me to stay with them anymore. So my dad, through my brother coming over there because he lived in the same town up in Chicago, came over with the police and they kicked me out of the house. And I was actually staying in a hotel for a while. Then I got kicked out of the hotel because I wasn't paying the bill because I was drunk. And I actually was on the street for a few days. And I don't know if in the middle of winter in Chicago. And I to the point where I was walking around, I got kicked out of a hospital one night around midnight. I called my son, and my son knew the situation and said, I'm not helping you. I'm not coming to get you. I had nowhere to go. And I was walking around with a duffel bag with all my belongings in it, and I ended up going into a church somewhere and just laying down. And I said, God, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't even care anymore. And then um, I even left my bag with all my license and my keys to my car and everything in some office in this church somewhere. I don't even know. I can't even remember. And I think I only had my phone. And then I just started walking. I went out and I started walking the streets, and I left all my belongings in that church. And I remember my mom finally calling me from Florida and saying, "Okay, I found you a hotel," because I had no money. I had nothing. I mean, I had nothing. And I left my car at the hotel. I didn't even have a way to get my car. And my mom finally called and said, "Okay, I got your hotel, and I'm gonna send some money." I don't even remember how we did this. I don't even know, but she sent me money somehow. So the taxi, and they got me a hotel room somewhere in another town. And so for about a 2 or 3 week period, I had nothing. I was basically living off my mom and dad. And then the funny thing is, my brother got involved. My younger brother got involved. Somebody had called from the church saying, "Hey, they found out who I was, and I got my belongings back. I got my car back. I got all this stuff back." And I believe it was from the Holy Spirit, from my dad praying. Everything that I had thought I had lost, I'd never see again, I got back. I got my car, my keys, my wallet. I got everything back. That was a miracle right there.
Hmm.
And so, anyways, I went back. My parents got back from Florida in that spring. It might have been 2018. I don't know. I started straightening myself up. I figured, I can't do this to my mom and dad. This is ridiculous. And I started working for another company, driving a truck. And then I probably 3 or 4 months went by, and I was doing really good. Then I got into another relationship, and which ended abruptly. She was a big drinker. We had dated for about a year. And then I kind of went into the cycle again where I was drinking again. Not horribly, but it was bad enough. And then I got fired from my job again. And then my dad recommended I go to a 7-day rehab up in Chicago, which I did. And I got out in probably July of, oh God, this was probably the end of 2019, I want to say, somewhere around in there, end of 2019, kind of right before COVID era, And then I started living with my parents again because I didn't know where to go. And then my mom and dad came down to Florida, as they usually do every January and February. Now this is January, February of 20. When they came back, we all got COVID, which we ended up being okay. And then I pretty much started straightening up again, and I started going back to church. And this is where my things started really getting better for me. I became very seriously about going back to church, praying with my dad on Friday night before the Sabbath. I wrote a 3-page Sabbath prayer. I don't know why I did this. I think the Holy Spirit led me to do this. I wrote like a 3 or 4-page Sabbath prayer that me and my dad still say to this day every Friday night. And we say like 8 or 10 Psalms apiece, and we've been doing this almost for three and a half years now. And the transformation from when I started doing that, and I'm probably March of 2020 till September 2020, and that's when I moved down here. I mean, it was just like a miracle. I mean, I wasn't working, but I had saved up enough money where I knew, like at some point, getting into fall of 2020, I wanted to move down here, which I did. But my life just became back to normal, and I really think it's because I went back to God. I really do. And so I moved down here in September of 2020, and I just packed up my stuff, and I always wanted to move to Florida, and my sons were grown men now, and they didn't need my help anymore, and so I did. I moved down here in September of 2020, got a job working at the hotel, the Sanibel Marriott Hotel, and everything was okay, and then for the first year and a half, I lived down here, maybe 2 years. And then I did kind of relapse again. I started having some bouts of depression again. And I think the first relapse I had was in October of 2022. And maybe around September, I started drinking again because I kind of went through a little state of depression again. And I wanted to feel numb. So after this 2-year period where I hadn't drank, I hadn't touched a drop of alcohol, and things were going great. I was still going to church, and this is even before you became the pastor down here. And I just started drinking again, and it got so bad that my dad basically said, "You need to go to rehab, a real rehab this time." So I did. I went to a rehab. I think it was in Boca Raton on the East Coast. And I came. When I went there, I fought my mom and dad to go there. I didn't even want to go there. I didn't want to be there. I fought with the people in there, verbally every day. I didn't want to be there. I never participated in their programs. I never did anything. I didn't even care. I just was thinking, I can't wait to get out of here. I'll go back to work and I'll be fine. So I did get out of that rehab in November of 2022, which is, last year, And within 2 weeks, I was back drinking again. And I was, my younger brother had came down for the holidays for 2022. And I was drunk the entire time they were down here. I never even seen them. And finally, probably around December 27th, my dad and my brother came to my apartment, and they my door was unlocked, and they walked in there, and I was completely drunk. I was passed out just about. And my dad, woke me up and said, "You need to go to rehab." And he goes, "And if you don't go," he goes, "I'm going to take your keys and your wallet." And he goes, "You're not going to have any money. You're going to have a car to drive. You're going to have nothing." And he goes, "And you're going to run out of money." He goes, "You're going to lose your apartment." And he goes, "You have to do this." And so I knew at that point, I knew I needed to go to the rehab. And I willingly signed myself in there for 30 days. And so December 27th is when I became sober again. And then I went into the rehab for 30 days. I got out around the end of January, came back, got out, came back, and went back to work around February 4th of this year. But one thing I do want to mention, though, between the first and second rehab that I mentioned that I went to last year that I went to, there was a point when I got out of the first rehab and I had been drinking. I was kind of on the fence of drinking and not drinking. And I got pretty sick one night, and my dad called an ambulance for me and brought me to the hospital. And I remember being released from the hospital because I was pretty much had sobered up. They had no reason for me to keep me there. But my dad had my keys to my apartment. I didn't have my car. And, I was a mess. I probably had been drinking for 3 or 4 days straight. I hadn't showered. I hadn't shaved. I didn't even look recognizable, honestly. And I didn't know. In fact, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I was trying to call my dad. He wasn't answering because he was sleeping. So now I was stuck at this hospital here. I didn't know where to go. And I was feeling really, really bad about myself. thinking that I did this again. I went into, I started drinking again after I got out of the first rehab. And what am I doing with my life? And my parents are upset. And, hey, I'm 55 years old. And why am I doing this to my mom and dad and to my family? And so they released me out of the emergency room. And at first, they weren't even going to call me a taxi. And then my parents probably lived about a half hour walking distance away. And I was going to walk. And I'm like, it was raining, you're talking about it's like in November and it's rainy. It's like 55 degrees. I had flip-flops on, shorts. I was a mess. And I remember going out of the emergency room and sitting on a bench, and I looked up to the sky and I said, God, I'm not feeling too good physically or mentally. I said, but I need you to tell me that I'm going to be okay. And I mean like right now. And I begged God for about 5 minutes to please tell me I'm going to be okay. Tell me that you still love me. I was a mess. Am I grieving the Holy Spirit? What am I doing? I've come back to church. I've taken everything so seriously. My dad, me and my dad hand out Bible tracts and we do all these things. And, am I a sinner? Yeah, I'm a sinner. But God, I really love you. I want you to be in my life. And I please tell me I'm going to be okay. So I went back into the emergency room and somehow they finagled to get me a taxi or something. So I had to wait there for about 45 minutes. And I'm just sitting there and I'm looking at the emergency room entrance, and in comes a woman, and I only noticed her because she was a very attractive woman, probably like in her mid-30s. And the first thing I thought in my mind, I hope she doesn't sit next to me because I'm a mess. And I smell, and I'm just thinking of this woman. I'm like, okay. And so she goes and talks to the emergency room desk, like where you check in like 5 minutes. And then she sits across from me, and I'm thinking, oh, great. I'm like this. I don't even want this woman to, whatever. And she keeps on looking at me. And then she sits like on like kitty corner from me, like on a 90-degree angle from me, like really close to me. And I'm thinking to myself, well, why is this woman even? I don't know this woman, And then she sits down right next to me, and she goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, not really." I said, "But no, I'm not." And she's like, "Well, what's going on?" And I said, "Do you really want to hear this?" And she goes, "No." I want you to tell me. She goes, "I want to know." So I started explaining to her my story, and like for 2 or 3 minutes I rambled on, and I said, "Don't even get close to me because I smell, and and I haven't brushed my teeth, and I'm a mess." And she goes, "Oh, that's okay." She goes, "That's okay." And then now I did have my wristband from the hospital still on me, and she sat down right next to me, and she goes, "Michael, do you want to pray with me, or do you want me to pray for you?" And I said, "Well," the first thing I said, how do you know my name?" And now she may have seen in my wristband, I don't know, but I don't even know. And she goes, I think I know who you are. And she goes, "But would you like me to pray for me?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Of course." So she put one hand on my forehead and one hand on my shoulder. And this woman, I mean, it's almost might even bring tears to my eyes, but she prayed for me for about 10 minutes, a prayer that I've never, ever in my life had somebody pray for like this in my life. I mean, and it was all about how much God loved me. And how much, I might get a little teared up here, but it had nothing to do with like you're a bad person or what you did again or you made a mess of things again. But I'm telling you, for about 10 minutes, this woman prayed so gently and so softly and so nicely. I've never had anybody pray like that with me ever in my life. And either there was some kind of divine intervention in there. I really believe that. Either it was an angel or God somehow impressed upon this woman to come and pray for me. But she prayed for me. And her whole theme of her whole prayer was that Jesus died for my sins and that there's nothing that God wouldn't do to try to help me and to save me, and that I'm going to be okay and just stay with God.
Wow.
And that's a true story. That is a 1,000% true story. And, I remember, when she was done praying for me, I asked her, I said, "Are you an angel?" Because I know that, that sometimes angels appear to people. And she wouldn't really answer my question. She goes, "You're going to be okay." And then she went and talked to the emergency room desk for a little while, and then she left. And I don't even know what she was doing there. I don't even know I never even asked her. I'm like, but she just came in from nowhere and sat down next to me. And her prayer, I wish I could repeat all the prayers. I mean, her prayers were me. But it was really how much God loves me and how much he cares about me. And I still went home, and I still wasn't feeling all that great, and I still kept on drinking. But that's a true story. But I've been sober since December 27th, of last year going into this year, I'm back to work. Eating very healthy again. I work out every day, and it's a miracle.
Wow. Praise the Lord, man. That is a powerful story. I mean, just the whole narrative that you've been sharing with us about, how God has been, in your mind, in and out, but He was actually always there,
Definitely.
and never left you, even though you may have thought you left Him.
Right.
He never let go of you, and I think that's really the story that for our listening audience today. If you're, no matter where you're at in your journey, God hasn't left you. I think that's one of the things that the devil tries to whisper in our ear when we're in our darkest moments, is that you've
Definitely.
gone too far. How could anyone ever love you, let alone God, after what you've done?
Uh-huh.
And yet He keeps pursuing us.
I want to bring something else up too, and another reason why that I was feeling so down about myself is that when my dad had taken my money away from me, I was stealing alcohol.
Hmm.
I sold alcohol from the Publix, and I still yet to have to pay them back. I'm going to pay them back, but I probably stole about $100 worth of alcohol from them because I had no money, and that was another reason why I was feeling so bad. So, but yet this woman came and prayed for me after I did that, and so yeah, I mean, and I'm sorry to say that I did that, but I think it's part of the story.
Well, I'm 100% sure there's going to be some questions that people want to ask you at the end. But at this time, we're going to switch it over to Richie and let him share his next presentation with us on his road to recovery. And then after we hear that presentation, we're going to be back with Mike, and you can ask him some questions. I know there's another question or two I want to ask him, but let's turn it over to Richie at this point and hear what he has to say.
Welcome to Unchained, Hope and Healing from Addiction. It's not easy to break the chains that hold us back. It doesn't happen overnight. But if we work it, it works. That's a saying that I would often hear in the program. Keep coming back. It works if we work it. So far in our series, we've seen how each of us have chains that hold us back, something keeping you from living life to its fullest. The same power and principles that broke through my chain of opioid addiction can break through yours. Whatever is holding you back. But we've got to break through the denial and get honest. We've got to get real. We've got to say, you know what, I need help. We also have to believe that help is possible. Because without hope, a miracle cannot happen. We've got to be open-minded. We've got to believe there is something bigger, stronger than us that can. Step 1, I can't. Step 2, He can. Step 3, I'll let Him. Now that we have a hope that a miracle can happen, it's time to step out in faith. People have asked me, what is the difference between belief and faith? So we learned about belief last time. So if I move to a town and a friend of mine tells me a good mechanic and I go to them and I say, hey, I'd like this to get fixed. I believe, because of what my friend told me, that I can take my car to this mechanic and he'll do a good job. However, if I take my car to him and he does do a good job, the next time I bring it back, then it's not belief or hope, it's faith. I know that he's going to do a good job. Now that we have hope a miracle can happen, it's time to step out in faith. Faith is the manifestation of belief and trust in God. James 2:20 says faith apart from works is useless. It doesn't do us any good. James 2:26, as the body apart from the spirit is dead, so also faith apart from works is dead. James 2:18 in the Message, faith and works fits together hand in glove. James 2:14, what good is it if you say you have faith but don't show it? Can that kind of faith save anyone? So if you want to live an unchained life, you have to start living what you say you believe. That's what faith is. We have an excellent example of faith in the 5th chapter of John. So we've looked at the 3rd chapter, we've looked at the 4th chapter, and now we're going to look at the 5th chapter. In the 5th chapter, we have this guy, and he's laying by a pool. John 5, 2 through 6. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there in a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" Now at first it seems like a pretty stupid question. Do I want to be healed? Well, what do you think? Verse 5 says he had been there in the same sick state for 38 years. I wonder, how many years have you been in the same state that you're in right now? How many years are you going to just feel drowned by the debt? How many years are you going to feel chained by circumstance and problems? How many years are you going to be chained to a dysfunctional and toxic relationship? For 38 years, this man has been coming to the pool only to leave the same way he showed up. How many seminars are you going to go to on anger and still leave the same way you showed up? How many classes on forgiveness do we have to go to finally have a breakthrough? Now, some translations say, "Do you want to be healed?" Others say, "Do you want to be well?" But my favorite says, "Do you want to be whole?" The Greek word isn't just talking physical, it's talking spiritual, it's talking emotional. We are physical, emotional, mental, spiritual beings. And whenever one of those elements are out of whack, we don't feel the fullest, we don't live to the fullest of our potential. Man, God's number one goal for us has always been wholeness. Which is why when you ask God for help, I've noticed something. He'll always go deeper than you really want him to go. At first, I just wanted some help with a drug problem. But then he kept digging and digging because you see, the drugs were only a symptom of a much bigger, deeper problem. Just being drug-free won't give you wholeness. Have you ever heard of the term a dry drunk? A dry drunk, they're just as miserable and mean as before. They're just without drinking. In fact, most of the time, a dry drunk is so miserable to be around, the people that live with them wish they would go back to drinking. Anything short of wholeness isn't enough. You see, until you feel completely unchained, you'll never feel and experience life to its fullest potential. And so in verse 3, it says, there were a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. Just as there was a variety of problems at this pool, there are a variety of problems that all of us are facing in our lives. Some of us have money problems. Some of us have marital problems. Some of us have health problems. Some of us have job problems. Some of us have drug problems. Some of us have eating disorders. Some of us have bad attitude problems. And like this broken man, what we often do is we look at a pool and we think, if I could just get that, everything would work out. If I could just get the degree, everything would work out. If I could just get more money, everything could work out. If I could just get married, everything would work out. If I could just get unmarried, everything would work out. But those things won't give you wholeness. Jesus asked, do you want to be whole? Not, do you want to get married? Not, do you want to be rich? Because to give you those things wouldn't be nice. It would be torture, because then you would believe that those things can give you wholeness, that they can make you happy, and they can't. Do you want to be whole? And the sick man answered, well, I have no one to put me into the pool. That's the wrong answer. The pool won't give you wholeness. Popularity won't give you wholeness. Pay raise won't give you wholeness. A good waistline won't give you wholeness. A new spouse won't give you wholeness. Only an experience with something bigger, better, and more powerful than that stuff will give you wholeness. You see, the legend of this story and the legend during this time was that if you got in the water at just the right time, when it moved, that you would be healed. But you know what? You would think that at some point over 38 years, this guy would have realized, you know what? I don't think it works. I've been here for 38 years, and I've never seen anybody healed by this pool. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. How many times do you have to go to the dope to realize that the dope doesn't work? How many times do you got to go to that website to realize, you know what? It's not worth the shame that I'm going to feel. How many times are you going to realize that the worrying never works, money never works, arguing never works, complaining never works? But this is the thing, God is offering something that works right now. Like with the paralytic, Jesus is asking each of us, do you want to be whole? The English Standard Version calls them invalids. The King James Version calls them impotent. It's a word that means ineffectual, inadequate, useless. In a Greek word, it means weak, sickly. But you know what? Think of some of the amazing people in history that have had disabilities. I mean, Helen Keller and Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles. And I mean, you've got so many different people that didn't allow their disability to define them or their circumstance to stop them. And so there's got to be more than physical disability here. You see, I believe the greatest obstacle to their wholeness, to being unchained, wasn't physical, but it was spiritual. It was emotional. It was a lack of faith. It wasn't a lack of their health. It was a lack of their belief, their faith. And the sick man answered, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool, and the water is stirred up, and while I'm going, another steps down before me." And you see, he's blaming other people for his current situation. It's always easier to blame someone else for what's wrong with you, but you've got to take responsibility for your own life. You can't blame anyone else. No one is getting between you and wholeness but you. We can't blame anyone else for our chains. And look, we may not be responsible for everything that happens to us in life, but we are responsible with how we respond with what happens to us in life. And so here we have Jesus, this miracle worker, the resurrection and life. He's touched people and healed them. The blind see, the disabled walk, the mute can talk, the deaf can hear. He's standing right in front of this guy asking, do you want to be whole? And this guy brings up a pool. He's looking past Jesus. Hey, Jesus, could you move over? I need to keep an eye on the pool and make sure nobody gets in there before me. You see, his faith is weak, not his legs. His faith, not his legs, are what's coming between him and wholeness. He's so focused on his present dilemma, he can't see the solution staring at him in his face. In John 5:6, I love it. It says, Jesus already knew that he had been there for a long time. You see, your marriage needs help. God already knows. Your body needs healing. God already knows. You have a spending problem. God already knows. He knows how long you've been where you are, and he knows how long you've been going through what you're going through. Even when we don't know what to do, God already knows. Do you want to be whole? And the sick man answered, Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool. Jesus just cuts him off and he gets to the point. Get up, take up your bed, and walk. You see, the principle of faith is the getting up. You have to get up. This guy wasn't healed until he got up. Information alone won't lead to transformation. You can go to seminar after seminar. You can go through this whole series. Information alone won't lead to transformation. Information plus participation, that equals transformation. You've got to participate in the unchaining experience. You've got to participate in this process. It works if and only if we work it. Faith is living what you have learned. It's putting your life in God's hands and trusting Him. If it works when you work it. The moment the paralytic practiced what he heard, the chain of paralyzation was broken in his life. Someone who's been stuck for 38 years is moving. But the question to you is, will you trust him enough to just get up right now? Maybe you don't know what you believe. Maybe you don't even know if there is a God. Will you just give it a chance? Would you just give it a try to see if there's something to it? Ephesians 2:4-6 says, "But God, being rich in mercy because of the great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved." And check this out, verse 6, "And raised us up with him." Get up. "And seated us with him in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus." I don't know about you, but I want to raise up today. This message is for people who are ready to rise up. This series are for people who are done rolling over and giving up. Stop letting your addiction chain you. Stop letting the past paralyze you. Stop letting haters get inside your head. Do you want to be whole? At the end of this scene in John 5:8, it says that the Jews were seeking all the more to kill Jesus. When Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead in John 11:53, it says from that day on, they made plans to put him to death. So think about this. Every miracle Jesus performed was a death sentence for Jesus. He knew what healing this man would cost. He knew that to make this man's legs move meant that his own legs would need to be nailed to a cross and could not move. For this man to be able to pick up his bed and walk, he would have to pick up his cross and walk. The only way to give wholeness was if he went into the grave and died. To break your chains, Christ's body was broken. That's how much God loves you. Listen, no one else has ever done that for you. No one has ever done what God has done for you. So why not trust him when he says, get up? Why don't you give him a chance? Do you want to live an unchained life? Do you want to be whole? The question is coming through to each of us right now. And there's only one real good answer. Yes, I want wholeness. Well, then you got to get up. You got to make the decision right now to get up. What you've been doing hasn't worked. So why not try something new?
Wow, Richie, thank you so much for that beautiful biblical reminder of what it takes to find freedom, to be unchained from the things that have been binding us. You know, God gives us the information, he gives us the message, but we have to respond to that message. He doesn't just do that for us. He will never, take our free will from us. It's a choice that we make. And when we make that choice to stand up, even if we can't do it, that will to stand, God strengthens us and gives us the ability to do it. His grace is sufficient for us. And I'm so glad that I'm still here with my friend Mike. And we've got a few questions now from those who have been participating in tonight's presentation. And one of the questions that I wanted to ask you here was, you mentioned depression was your trigger. And so the question was, how have you learned to deal with that in a different way or a healthier way than alcohol through this process?
Definitely eating healthy and exercising and working out. I feel that builds good endorphins in your brain, and I need that as part of my daily life, my daily activity, and I make sure that I do that every day. And I make sure also that I pray. I make time to pray to God in the morning, in the evening, every day.
Wow. Yeah. So it's like those healthy daily routines.
Right. I mean, I don't have to write it down, but I can guarantee that I do those every day. Yeah. And honestly, even if I have a bad day or at work or whatever, I know that I have those things to fall back on, and when I go home, I look forward to it. So.
Yeah, so that was kind of one of the follow-up questions about, are you doing anything different to help you stay sober now than before? Would that be what you already just said, or is there some other things that you're doing now to stay sober?
Yeah, pretty much those few things. I make sure that I talk to my younger son every day. My older son I don't talk to very much, but my younger son, and that really keeps me focused on track. I need to be there for him and help him. but yeah, definitely with the prayer and with living a healthy lifestyle every day. That's pretty much. And honestly, it really, you'd be surprised how really good you feel in your head, just doing those small things like that every day. I mean, to me, they're not small, but those are huge things that I think people need to do every day. I think people take that for granted. Everybody says, "Oh, I work out," but it really does help.
Mm.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, and so the theme for this presentation from Richie was about wholeness. So you've dealt with a lot of brokenness
Yeah.
in your story. So, I guess the last question, this one's coming from me, is like how have you been made whole? How has Jesus made you whole through all this brokenness that you've been dealing with these last 10, 15 years?
Well, I think the first thing that Jesus has made me whole physically. I mean, I no one. I mean, I could have died when I was 42 years old with Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 2, and even before I knew the illness that I had, when I didn't know I was sick, but I didn't know I was sick, and I didn't know what was going on. I prayed Psalm 91 every day, even though I wasn't going to church. So, I mean, that alone right there. And Pastor, my prayer, it was a very simple prayer. I said, God, I want to have the best possible outcome I could have. That was my prayer. I didn't say I want to be healed. I just asked for him the best possible outcome I could have. And most people don't even know I was sick if they looked at me. They won't even believe that I had cancer. And so that right there has really has allowed me to be more faithful, I think, in the God and Jesus, to know now that I know I can rely on him, even when I was really not practicing my faith when I was baptized when I was 28 or whatever. That's and that just made my faith really, really increase. It really has. And then, of course, when I reached out to God when I was in the hospital, leaving the emergency room that one night, and I cried out to him, and he was there for me, and almost immediately, and there's power in that. I mean, that's, I'm a witness to that. I can testify to that. That was powerful.
Mm.
And yeah, and I mean, there's been other times too, but I mean those were like two of the things that stood out. But God, I remember going back to when my mom and dad first joined the church. I did think that that the whole idea was kind of like an interesting thing to me, and even as a young adult, there was always a part in my soul, I guess, that I knew one day I would follow God. And 50 some years later, here I am following him. So, and I think God kept me around for some reason. I don't know. There's been many times maybe where I shouldn't be here, but I am.
Amen. Yeah, so I didn't give you the chance earlier to kind of just talk to one of our, our listeners that are people that are watching the program today, and somebody out there might be struggling with depression. Maybe they're turning to alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling. I mean, there's all kinds of things that people turn to when they're feeling down, depressed, and feeling hopeless. So, just what would you say to that person today from your own experience to give them a little hope to what they're going through?
Well, I would like to say very openly that no matter what you're doing at the present, no matter whatever alcohol or substance abuse that you're using, you're going to get sober, and you're going to come back to reality. And at some point, you're going to have to deal with whatever you have going on in your life. And there is really, besides your faith in God and praying to God, there's really good programs out there that you need to get yourself into that will really help you. And it's really about doing the small stuff, like I said, every day, working out and eating healthy, and getting yourself back into a lifestyle where you could get past your addiction. But no matter what, whatever you're doing, it's going to come to an end. And you're either going to get sick, or you're going to be in a car accident, or something bad's going to happen, and it can't continue on. And I've been in some really, really low, dark places where I thought I was going to die. I didn't even care about my life. And the little faith that I had, I didn't stop. I prayed, like when I was telling the pastor earlier, when I prayed Psalm 91 when I had cancer. Don't give up. God is there. And even after I stole alcohol between the first and second rehab, and I begged God that to have some kind of divine intervention, the person that prayed for me told me that God still loved me. And I think that's the most important thing. And there's a purpose here for all of us, and that you need to stay focused on that. And I don't care if your wife left you, your girlfriend left you, your kids won't talk to you. There's a purpose for all of us being here, and there's nothing that Satan can do to drive us, that should drive us away from participating in our faith, and and always making an effort to get back to God.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Mike, for being here and for sharing your heart. We really appreciate it. And I just want to remind each and every one of you that if you haven't registered yet, it's still not too late to do so. You can register right with the link on the screen, relevantseminars.com/Fort Myers, and you can be involved in our drawing. We do have a drawing for tonight. We have a winner that has been chosen to receive one of Pastor Richie Halverson's signed books, The Darkness Will Not Overcome. And our winner for tonight is Sarah Rutledge. Sarah Rutledge, congratulations on that. And we will be contacting you shortly about how to receive that book. We want to encourage everyone. If you didn't win, that's okay. You can find Richie's book online on Amazon. The Darkness Shall Not Overcome. You can get his whole story there. It's a great sharing book for those who are struggling. And if you're here in the Fort Myers community, if you're looking for a safe place to come worship, we want to encourage you to come to our church right here in Fort Myers. Fort Myers Seventh-day Adventist Church is a place that anybody can come no matter what you're going through. You're going to be loved. You're going to be accepted. There's people here who have been where you're at, and you will find Jesus in the doors of this church. So we encourage you to look us up on Google and drive by, visit us. We have services every Saturday at 11 a.m. And we want to encourage you on your walk, because we all want to be unchained. That's the journey that we are walking together in this life. And one day soon, Jesus is going to come, and there's going to be no more chains. There's going to be no more sorrow. There's going to be no more death. But until that time, we have to help each other. Every single story that we've gone through in this series has shown how it's a combination of God and his Holy Spirit and the love of others, the love of people, human beings in flesh and bone that come in alongside us and help us along the way. And so we want to be that for you. So please come by, reach out to us. You can mention it in the comments. We'll reach out to you as well. We want to be that support for you in your walk with Jesus. So again, thanks for joining us for another episode of Unchained, and we look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night at 7:30. Until then, God bless.
God bless.